Hello and welcome to the Jazz Jam Podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Gunnels, joined by my co-host, Max Levy. And on today's episode, we are going to be getting into Kamasi Washington's latest album entitled Fearless Movement. It's a really cool album, brings in a lot of elements of hip-hop and R&B and some funk grooves as well. So super excited to get into this one. Max, how are you doing? How's everything been? And in Casey, I know Max texted me on Sunday and said he was playing at an EDM festival. So how's all that going, Max?
It's been an interesting weekend. Yeah, Friday night I had just a private event downtown KC, and then Saturday night I played a salsa gig, and then Sunday I did an EDM festival. I did a little 30-minute set with a DJ producer I know by the name of Oblivinati. Check out his work. It's kind of interesting. His style of EDM is a little bit more artistic and musical and has transitions. And so the portion of his set, you do an hour-long set, and he started with the hard banging stuff, and then it moved into more slower grooves, and he had a vocalist sitting with him named Twin Flame, and then me on top blowing over and adding in little snippets here and there behind the vocals. And then I had kind of one big solo in the middle of my 30-minute set with him. That was really fun. And it's always interesting to see the cast of characters in the EDM community, because who knows what they're going to wear and how they're going to dance and what drugs they're on.
Yeah. And definitely the festival thing. That's I'm sure you're a little out of your element personally. I don't know how many EDM festivals you've been to before.
Only ones where I've played, which is one other one in Wichita that was also very interesting. But that one was a longer set and a little bit more involved. This was just sort of, I got nothing else to do, and I was there to support and kind of hang out with the producer friend Oblivinati and just have a good time and hang out. And I didn't dabble in anything. I was just in and out, but I was in my pineapple Hawaiian shirt, and my khaki shorts, and yeah, a little out of place, but it was a lot of fun.
Standard Max attire. Are the parts written out when you're playing with him, or are you just pretty much it's all improvised, or like how's that work?
It's pretty much all improvised. I try and stick to a theme or two at the top whenever I'm coming in, and less is more is how I kind of start, and you creep in, and then in the middle where I was involved with is when I sort of really start to solo and can do a lot of more jazz influenced playing over on top, because a lot of it is minor grooves, 2 or 3 chord vamps, and then all these different sounds on top of it. And so it's like I'm making sure I know what key I'm in. So I'll just like play a couple of notes here or there on the key I think it is. It's probably A minor, C minor, F minor, maybe D flat. One of those keys typically is what he'll do. So I'll just come in and play a few notes and then go from there. So it's pretty improvised, but I have 1 or 2 ideas that I'm sticking to.
Yeah, it's probably good listening practice too if you're just like don't know what key you're in, got to figure that out first. So that's cool. That sounds like fun. It's always good to broaden your horizons and play over some different stuff.
That's how I look at it. There's only 2 kinds of music, really: good music and bad music.
Yeah.
And so if you at least find what you're doing good for you, it's worth doing, and it's fun, and it can I don't know, change things up with your normal routine or whatever if you're always just playing the same gigs over and over again.
Yeah. That's awesome. But sounds like you had a fun and busy weekend. Every time I check in with Max, he's doing something different, whether it's one of the many groups he's playing in or at a wedding gig in Colorado or wherever he is. So it's always fun to keep up with Max and what he's doing. That's why I ask. Cool, Max. Before we get into the album itself, do we want to go over anything or any recommendations? Do our Jazz Jam recommends any of that stuff you want to talk about?
Yeah, a couple things. I'll go ahead with the Jazz Jam recommends. For those who may not know, every episode we try and recommend something for the listener to check out, whether it's an album or a movie a TV show, whatever it may be. And this episode, I'm recommending the organist, Pat Bianchi. His album called Three is a trio album. I believe it came out in February of this year of 2024. It's got the great Troy Roberts on tenor sax. It's a killer album. It's all pretty much standards. They do one Eddie Harris tune. So it's one album that came to mind about, that would be related to you and me specifically as an organ and saxophonist, organist and saxophonist. So definitely for you, Dwayne, to check out. But anyway, for the listeners, it would be a great album if you want an interesting take on traditional jazz standards in a organ trio context that has fun and some stretching on it. I really like what they do on that album. So that's called Three from Pat Bianchi and Troy Roberts.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. I'm definitely gonna have to check it out, and maybe we'll have to think about it on the podcast. That might be a good episode to do.
Yeah, that'd be a newer one to do, and definitely enough in there to talk about. And then I want to mention one thing, which is we're trying to start this newsletter, and the idea is it would be an email newsletter that would include at least one or two articles I'd write. Maybe Dwayne, you'd contribute as well. And we talk about some jazz news and what we're doing here. Maybe we'd include a written out transcript of our overall thoughts for an album. And it would include maybe jazz obituaries. There's been, unfortunately, some deaths lately in the world of jazz. Guitarist Russell Malone passed away, and trumpeter Jim Rotundi, and also the great jazz critic and historian Dan Morgenstern. So when those things happen, I think it's important if one of those losses, or if there was a musician that you or I really connected with, we probably have some things to say about it when these cats die. And so it'd be nice to commend them, and also we could review newer records and just talk about some jazz news and what we're doing here on the Jazz Jam podcast. So we've had some people sign up on our website. There is a tick you can click on and enter in your email at the bottom of the website pages, and that will get you to our email list to receive our newsletter. The idea is I would come up with it. You would help as well. And we release it either the week of an episode release or the week after. So if you want to receive that newsletter, feel free, sign up on our website. It'd be great to have you.
Yeah, and we're always trying to kind of expand our horizons, like we talked about with Max and his EDM festival. So, yeah, this is an idea that Max had, and I think it's really cool, and just a really fun, easy way to digest some jazz news and, kind of hear about what we're doing without necessarily having to listen to an entire 2-hour episode. If you don't have time, you could check in with our newsletter. So yeah, we're excited to get that rolling, and definitely go to our website and sign up for that so you can be notified when those come out. Cool, Max. Well, you want to get into the record itself?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit of background. This is Kamasi Washington, the great saxophonist and band leader. This is his 5th studio album, his 3rd album as a band leader, released on May 4th, 2024, not long ago, on the label called Young, which is a British independent record label and is part of the Beggars Group record company. The label was originally called Young Turks when Caius Pawson established his own small label after being an A&R guy at XL Recordings. The name comes from when he used to supply the DJs and sound equipment for late-night dance parties called Young Turks. Now, one thing to note is that this is typically, comparatively to other albums, a long album, running at almost an hour and a half long. But this is actually Kamasi's shortest album yet, because usually they're about 2 hours long, slightly longer. And Kamasi also says that this album, Fearless Movement, focuses on the earthly, quote unquote, and he states that he focused on dance and movement with this particular record. And there are moments in the music where you can definitely tell that that is very true. And we get a huge cast on this album. Of course, the band leader himself, Kamasi Washington, will be on tenor saxophone, also on alto saxophone on one of the tracks. Kamasi was born in 1981, raised in LA, I believe, to a very musical family. He learned drums and piano at an early age, where he first learned saxophone at 13 years old after tinkering with his dad's soprano sax. He'd go on to be a graduate at the Academy of Music at Alexander Hamilton High School, then enrolled in UCLA's ethnomusicology department. So he actually had an ethnomusicological degree, I think is how you'd say that. Um, and he got to play with the likes of pros such as Kenny Burrell and the great Billy Higgins, as well as fellow students throughout the program, including Thundercat and Thundercat's brother, drummer Ronald Bruner, who is on this album. Kamasi also released an album called Young Jazz Giants in 2004. He'd go on to join the Gerald Wilson Orchestra in 2005, and he also played on Kendrick Lamar's album To Pimp a Butterfly before debuting his own album named The Epic in 2015. Kamasi would go on to perform some recordings with Thundercat and release more albums as a leader, including this one. Kamasi Washington has played with a diverse group of musicians, including Herbie Hancock, Snoop Dogg, George Duke, Shaka Khan, Flying Lotus, and many others. He's also a member of a supergroup with Terrace Martin called Dinner Party and is a founding member of the jazz collective known as the West Coast Get Down, which includes many of the cast on this very album. And so I think that's a connection where Kamasi used a lot of players that he was very comfortable with and he had performed a lot with on this record, and that aids to the music a little bit. The more you listen to this album, you can tell that.
Yeah, and kind of going back to that Kendrick Lamar album, To Pimp a Butterfly, which is like kind of widely regarded as like Kendrick's best album and kind of one of the greatest hip hop albums of maybe all time and this generation. That jazz collective, the West Coast Get Down, played a huge part in producing and playing on that album, and it has a lot of jazz influence. So that's a really cool album. If you like hip hop, definitely one to check out if you haven't checked out. But yeah, a lot of these guys played a big part in that Kendrick Lamar album for sure.
Yeah, it definitely made a big splash, and people know Kamasi from that record. And yeah, it's a pretty monumental recording in and of itself. I think, did I see Kendrick Lamar might be playing the Super Bowl on the next Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think they just announced that on Sunday on opening day.
Yeah, so more to come on him.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
And then we get a host of characters, like we said, some from the West Coast Get Down, along with others. There's Brandon Coleman on keyboard and organ, Cameron Graves on piano too. And we got a killer horn section, a cat named Dante Winslow on trumpet and Ryan Porter on the trombone. And those two, along with Kamasi on sax, make up most of the horn section. And then you get, of course, I mentioned Ronald Bruner Jr., Thundercat's brother. If you don't know, Thundercat is a well-known bass player, and he's got his own thing going on, well-known on the scene. And it's great to hear him along with his brother on this album. And we also get drums from Tony Austin as well. A lot of percussionists too. Cahill Cummings, Alacoy Pete, I believe. Also Miles Mosley on double bass. I think Ben Williams is also on bass on the track, in addition to Thundercat. And then Patrice Quinn does a lot of vocals on a few tracks as well. Guitarist Woody Applin. Oh man, I can't say that. Aplanalp.
A plan app, something like that. A plan alp.
Yeah, let's go with that. And then percussionist Carlos Nino, a vocalist Banchamak Abagasi, Henrik Elias on vocals, Stephen Bruner on electric bass. That's Thundercat. And then DJ Battlecat as well, doing some vocals and turntable stuff. And then Roz Austin on some rap vocalizations on a track. Terrace Martin is featured on one track on alto sax. Ricky Washington sits in on flute. George Clinton, the great George Clinton on vocals. D Smoke on vocals. Joel Whitley on guitar. Robert Miller on drums. Andre 3000 on flutes on one of the tracks. Monopoly on synthesizer, I mentioned Ben Williams, Dwight Tribe on vocals, and BJ the Chicago Kid on vocals as well. That's almost all the musicians in Los Angeles. I'm just kidding, but that's a cast.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be what 20 something people on the album. So, yeah, lots of different musicians coming together and kind of playing a part in this album. And it's cool. We definitely get some really cool different features, different kind of hip hop elements and the funk element with George Clinton. So yeah, it's really interesting. And then Andre 3000 coming off of his latest release, which was kind of, the free flute jazz release, and he's playing flute on this album. So yeah, lots of stuff going on with this one, and lots of different musicians. Max, why don't we get into the first track on the album, Les Sanu?
Yeah, they start off with a statement. Les Sanu begins with cymbals, chimes, other percussion elements, and spoken word and spoken prayers. It's very cool the way the horns enter. They're sort of trilling horns enter with nice tom rolls and drumming going on. High notes on brass instruments are coming out to me towards the top, and the real groove of the tune starts at around 1 minute and 20 seconds. There's percussion that's used in addition to drums and the horn melody, and the form of the tune really starts at about 1 minute and 26 seconds, right as that, just right after that groove starts to settle in. There's a driving feel. It's got a catchy ostinato like bass line, and the form is sort of made up of 4 16-bar sections that make up the head. And the third 16-bar section sounds like it goes up a half step. And that kind of reminds me of the modal sort of practice from Miles Davis and those guys, like tunes like Impressions and So What, where you're laying on one chord or one sound, one modal sound for quite a while, and then you just move it up a half step for a little bit, and then you come back to the original sound. And so that's kind of what they're doing with this opening track. The piano solo starts right away after the head. Lots of single lines, some chordal movement interspersed. Pretty lengthy solo with a really nice build. It's sort of an extended piano feature. We're really cooking by the 4 minute mark. And I want us to listen to a moment of the piano solo, get a feel for this stretching moment in this opening track called Les Sanu. Who's any piano players? Does that remind you of, Dwayne?
Yeah, I get, definitely the McCoy Tyner thing, and definitely lots of hints at modalism. And the left hand is very McCoy Tyner esque in the kind of way he's using his left hand and not necessarily highlighting like one chord, but kind of using a more like modal way of playing. Yeah, and it's really cool. This album, we get a lot of this kind of feel on this album, which is kind of this like super groove heavy shred fest kind of feel where everyone's kind of going off. So we get like very busy percussion there, and kind of just a shredding piano solo to start.
Yeah, throughout the album, drums are going to come out, and we're going to get some bashing at some really key moments. And there's a moment there where you recognize it's an ensemble playing the solo. Everybody's paying attention to what's going on. And you're right. There is McCoy Tyner. There is that modal sort of playing, and it's it's surprising how long this piano solo is to me, but in a good way. They weren't afraid to stretch it, and it's a nice feature because he's the piano is not featured as much in any of the other tracks that I can remember. So this is really nice out the gate to get this. And there's some great playing going on.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that the first solo, like the first feature, is like a super long piano feature on Kamasi's album. It was a little bit unexpected. You might expect Kamasi to take the first solo, and if there is another solo, not to be this like super long, like couple minute long feature. But yeah, I thought it was cool. I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Right. Interesting way to start out the album. But then the saxophone does come in with an extended trill technique right away with some delay and reverb added in the mix, some nice thematic development, and use of repeated two note or three note ideas. Kamasi is very rhythmic, and there's an epic aura that is created with Kamasi's feel and approach, complete with great chromaticism and nice lip falls to close it out. And he's screaming it out. Here's a taste of what Kamasi offers on his opening track of his album.
Yeah.
So right there, they sort of reach this ultimate climax, and I'm going to refer to that as what I'm calling the vortex moment. There are these vortex moments in his solos. Not every solo, but well, maybe almost every solo on this album, saxophone solo that is. He reaches this vortex moment, and that one is not as long as some of the others. There's others we'll go over that I'll bring that up and I'll point that out. But this is just a point to make that there's likely a climactic vortex moment where Kamasi is soloing that they're going to reach as an ensemble together. And that's where that intensity really, really climaxes to that point there.
Yeah, and they do that, yeah, through many solos, just like so much build. Like when you don't think they can build much more, they just keep driving like that intensity forward, and everyone's doing it together, which is really cool. And I really kind of commend Kamasi for this kind of playing and his like willingness to just kind of give you this like his full like send like kind of the Coltrane sheets of sound approach, and in a landscape where some guys kind of dial it back nowadays and are like a more kind of lighter sound, Kamasi's like completely unafraid to just be himself and play in this kind of very busy, like almost like modern Coltrane-esque approach. So I definitely commend Kamasi for that, and he does it throughout the entire album. He'll never stop being himself. So I do like that, and his playing is fantastic. There's no doubt about it. So yeah, it's cool to hear what he's got to offer.
I also made parallels between the great Pharoah Sanders as well.
That's a great comparison.
Yes, players like that, I think, is where Kamasi is coming from, which includes later Coltrane. So you're right about that. But yeah, I get, I don't know, the spirit of Pharoah Sanders is coming out of Kamasi's horn as well, and that sort of approach too. And then they have the head out after that sax solo. The rhythm section rides it out with chimes and other percussion elements used to close it out. So lots of percussion, very cool sax solo, very, very stretched out, but also really interesting piano solo to start out this album with the tune Les Sanu. And then we go a different direction a little bit with the second track. Dwayne, what do you think of this second tune?
Yeah, this second tune is super interesting, and I actually learned that part of the melody or some of like the piano part came from like his like toddler daughter, something that she had played on the piano. I just read that like actually last night when I was like looking at some different reviews of the album and reading up on the album a little bit. So that's interesting to know. We go right into the melody with Aisha the First, which everyone plays together, and we get vocals as well. There's lots going on in this beginning section, a driving rhythm section over the elongated notes in the melody, a nice kind of electronic funk groove that's being set forth. And then we get into this shredding Thundercat bass solo, which is really cool. He has a very unique bass tone. I think he usually plays a 6-string bass, and I think that's what he's doing here. So really cool tone from Thundercat. A lot of times when Thundercat is playing, you can tell it's Thundercat by the way he's playing. There's lots of faster double time lines here from Thundercat. And he kind of tends to play in this fast, flexible, shredding way a lot, which kind of fits in with what Kamasi does really well. And Thundercat has some really nice intervallic movement within these double time lines, which is really cool to hear, like kind of how fast he's playing and the flexibility to move kind of in different intervals and larger intervals. And he also does have some really nice moments of development throughout the solo. And it's just a really nice funk groove from the rhythm section here. Listen for how the guitar and the drums keep this moving. So Max kind of talked about this, like kind of the whole band soloing. We really get that here. So when you're listening to this and listening to Thundercat's solo, listen to the other members of the rhythm section and how they're kind of pushing this solo forward. And then Kamasi Washington comes in with his solo, and he has some really nice repetitive ideas. He's not afraid of staying in the same place for too long and letting the music build naturally, which it certainly does. And let's listen to his technique, how he does this technique here on Asia the First. Yeah, he really is just like not afraid to just stay in the same place for like much longer than you'd expect. And we're only really just have like 2 different ideas he's giving us there, but he's really just letting kind of the music build around him. Max, did you have something that you want to say about that?
All you need is one note, Dwayne.
It's
That's
so
all you
true.
need.
And if you have good feel, man, you can just play one note the entire time.
That's true. If you got the feel with it, you can do whatever you want and just stick to one note and play it in rhythmically interesting ways. And as you go, you take it in different octaves in the same note, or you take it to a half step up or a half step down, or you do a little theme right after. It's really proof in that snippet that all you need is one good note to say something. You don't need a lot of notes. You don't need 16th note triplet runs for 12 minutes to say something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what Kamasi does so well here. But then he kind of does get into a little bit more of that Kamasi style. He goes out a good bit, kind of away from the key center, kind of that Pharoah Sanders kind of way of playing where you're just like not really afraid to go away from where the music is really and kind of bring it back in. And he gets back towards the center more towards the end of the solo, which is nice. And there's just some really nice dynamic build with some of the vocals coming in towards the end of his solo, and just a really nice development in the solo here from Washington is just really nice. And then we get an extended hip-hop feature from Raj Austin after the Kamasi solo, which has a really cool spoken word feel to it. Lots of social justice messages within. Wow, speaking is hard this morning. And
take it easy, Dwayne.
I know, that's like,
don't go too fast.
I know. And the rap section here is fairly long on the track. I want to play I wasn't planning on doing this, but I want to play just a little bit of this section, just so we can kind of hear what's going on here and kind of hear the kind of hip-hop vibe we're getting on the album. So let's just listen to a couple seconds of this feature here.
You'll never notice, cause I'll never show it, cause you'll be too busy dissecting the motives of the world around you, trying to balance your focus. Anything, we can get everything in the moment. Every moment for me brings me closer to eternity. Man, you might think that that's closer to uncertainty, but perfect you, that's a perfect me. In the perfect world that could never be, I recognize you're the future.
Yeah, so that's kind of the feel we're getting. It's like very hip hop, some kind of spoken word feel to it. And I really do enjoy the message and the feel here, but I feel like it kind of might overshadow like the Thundercat and Kamasi solos, given like the track a little bit of a disjointed feel. It feels like it's a 7-minute track, and it kind of feels like two different tracks in one almost. By the end, I've like forgotten that Thundercat had this like awesome bass solo, so it's just kind of a lot going on here, and I feel like sometimes maybe this track might get in its own way a little bit too much, but I really love everything that goes on in the track. It's just there's a lot going on, so there's a lot to digest here.
I think there was a better way, or there is a better way to arrange this track. Maybe you intersperse the raps with solos. You know, it feels like you're right. There's sort of two songs in one, but
Yep.
it could be put together better. Like there's some pieces missing from this puzzle, or they're misshapen, or it's a puzzle that's been in the closet for 25 years and all the pieces are warped. It's something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe you shorten the solo section, you scatter the rap part with the instrumental play along with the instrumental playing, or you insert that vocal hook that happens at moments in this track, and you sort of intersperse things and put things together in different ways. I think that would really liven this track up instead of this sort of half and half approach that we're getting with Asia the First.
Yeah, and then the hip hop feature is like 3 minutes long. It almost feels like its own song entirely, but I really do like all the parts of the tune. So I think it's a really cool feature, and it's fun to listen to. So there's a lot cool going on, but I feel like it might be slightly disjointed at times here on the second track on the album.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else on that one?
I think that's all I've got for that one. Yeah, just that same melody on the way out from the beginning of the track. Yeah, and it's a really cool track. I enjoy it. Just, yeah, that's my only issue with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then we get the third tune called Computer Love. And this has a cool intro. This is a tune that's not written by Kamasi Washington. This is credited to Larry Troutman and Shirley Murdoch. And the tune comes from the American funk band called Zapp, Z-A-P-P. And the tune was originally released in 1986 on their fourth album. And this is a reimagining of the track Computer Love from that band. This version begins with a horn trio reminiscent of a chorale, but it's a modern day version or a modern day take on a introductory chorale horn section. And it's somewhat soothing. We sort of ease into this track, and this tune, Computer Love, features Patrice Quinn on vocals. There's great moments of drum bashing throughout this track. We mentioned that earlier. Drum roll brings in the groove along with chimes in the background, so more percussive elements. That one critique could be too much percussion may clutter the sound, and there are moments where that happens in this album. I wouldn't say this is one, but we're verging on a lot of percussion in these opening tracks. And in general, this is a chiller and slower groove than the first tune for sure. The melody starts around the 120 mark. There's a syncopated entrance of the second chord or harmony. So I'm kind of hearing it as 3 beats of one sound and then 5 beats of the next sound. The second harmony hit comes in on beat 4 rather than on beat 1. You could possibly try and think about it as a bar of 3/4 than a bar of 5/4. I'm just thinking about it as in it's 4/4, and that second harmony comes in on the 4th beat of the first bar of those 2 bars feels. And there's a nice breathy tone in the vocals as well. Moments of vibrato, cool style from Patrice Quinn on vocals. Great use of dynamics built within this melody and the tune itself. There's crescendos in the latter part of the form where the horns have growing long tones, or goose eggs, as I like to refer to them. So listen for those dynamics. And then there's a synth solo, I believe, starting around the 4-minute mark. Really nice, features moments of playing out, or as we would say, playing out of the key at moments where you can take an idea, move it up a half step, and then come back down. Or there's a lot of different ways to play out. So there's moments of that on this track. Nice accompaniment from the band and drummer, especially when backing up the solo, as it builds in intensity using repeating lines in the higher register and growing into the entrance of the saxophone solo. Let's check that out together.
Yeah, and this really reminds me of like kind of just the more modern synth playing, like the kind of Corey Henry, Snarky Puppy, lots of chromaticism in the playing. Yeah, it's a really cool synth solo though on this track.
Yeah, it's very much in that realm of playing and that sort of sound, that type of sound that you're talking about. We're getting that here with that solo. And then there's a cool saxophone solo, very fiery from Kamasi Washington on his solo. Nice repetition used here too. Effects like delay used sparingly as we reach inside the bowels of the vortex. So let's listen to a true vortex moment here in the middle of Computer Love.
Yeah.
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 So he's coming down from that very noticeable climax there, and the way he does that was very cool. So I wanted that extended a little bit, and you could hear that. And so to me, this is my. I'm gonna say I think that this is my favorite saxophone solo on the album. Because it just seems so well stated,
Yeah.
and it's like the band is breathing together a little bit, because there was that moment where they reached sort of that climax, and then there's like a release, and then they really verbatim bring out the groove again more noticeably. Did you catch that?
Yeah, and I feel like there's some other points where they do that, and I think we'll probably talk about that later, but that's something that Kamazi's so good at, and everyone on the album, like, we get some really cool moments where the solos build, like, intensify like crazy, and then there's this really cool, like, yeah, vortex climax kind of feel, and then this, like, release of, like, the tension and the way that they kind of come out of solos and back into different sections in the song, whether it be another solo or back into the melody. Just really cool. And yeah, I think that's a great point to make there, Max.
And some of his playing reminds me a little bit of the great George Adams. George Adams, a tremendous tenor sax player that played a lot in New York City. He had sort of the big tenor sound, almost Pharoah Sanders-like approach, but moments of also really great straight ahead playing. If you hear George Adams play over a blues, it's very interesting. A lot of it is riff based and then mixed in with really fast out there lines, very spiritual moments in a George Adams solo. So to me, there's some similarity there, and both of them have a sense of authenticity and sincere strength and will in their sound and in their playing. So that's a personal note. If you don't know George Adams, do check him out. The vocal line does come back in, and we've gone back to the cool groove section where we're chilling a little bit more, and we've brought the temperature back down to simmering just before they raise the dynamic once again and do an extended ride out section with a layering effect, adding background vocal parts, horn padding, and added licks from the trumpet. Synth sounds and intensified rhythm section playing is used right before they bring it down, and use percussion to do a light, short fade. It's not quite a fade, but it's similar to a true fade. So percussion to end us here again on Computer Love. I really dig the solos here, and it's a nice take on Zapp's tune Computer Love.
Yeah, definitely a really, really cool track. And yeah, I love Kamazi's solo here and the synth solo. So definitely a track to appreciate and to check out. And it leads us into the fourth track on the album, entitled The Visionary, which is just kind of an interlude, very short track, about a minute long, which is an interlude feature with synths and some different horns blowing over. It's kind of just intent on setting a vibe or a mood. Feels ethereal at times, but then bringing in slight dissonance at moments. So kind of taking us through a few different feels and vibes. And it really does just set up the next track on the album, which is Get Lit, which features funk legend George Clinton and rapper D Smoke, who I'm pretty sure, I'm almost 100% positive, is the brother of, oh wow, I can't remember his name now. Never mind. He's a singer. Do you know his brother's name?
No, I don't. But we can talk about that later. I don't know. It's not coming to me.
It'll come to me at some point. And their mom was like a backup singer in like for like Michael Jackson maybe or someone. So musical family D Smoke comes from. I can't believe I've actually seen his brother live, which is crazy that I can't remember his name. But his brother is a pop singer, R&B singer from LA as well. And this track definitely has a more funk and hip hop feel. His name is going to come to me at some point, by the way, just randomly. His name is going to come to me. But yeah, the previous track, The Visionary, kind of bleeds into the beginning of this track, and this song really grooves on the one during the verses, while bringing in some actual changes over different other sections during the song. There are some nice horn backing lines throughout the track, and throughout these centered verses. At the end, they vamp on the one, and we get a flute solo that feels really nice. All in all, it's a fun groove and tune, but it isn't blowing anyone's mind away. It doesn't do anything like super crazy, but I think sometimes music is just supposed to be fun to listen to and doesn't have to blow your mind. So I think that's honestly what Kamasi's going for here. Some of this music is just meant to feel good and meant to be fun. So Get Lit is a super cool track featuring George Clinton and super cool groove. So yeah, that's what I'm getting here from it.
I have two things to say about Get Lit. First is I really dig the song the more I listen to it. The first time I checked it out, I was like, and then I moved on. But then I kept going back to it, and there are just moments that really feel really good. You were getting at with that. And I love the second thing I wanted to say is I love the alliterative nature of some of the main lyrics of Get Lit with the use of wordplay on the words get and got. For instance, they say about to get got with, and later on they say better have the get and get gone. So I love that. That's fun. And you're right. It's a fun track. There are moments of really catchy vocal hooks and nice playing, and it's got a nice vibe to it. And it really sort of it really helps, I think, with the order of the album in terms of the tracks. Get Lit sort of jumbles up what we've been getting with some of the first few tunes, and Get Lit sort of changes the vibe on us and tweaks, your interest and piques your ear a little bit when Get Lit happens in the order of the tunes.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like at this point we're kind of taking a breather on the album. The Visionary kind of sets us into this tune, and this tune isn't like this super heavy shred fest like some of the other tunes. So it kind of does feel like a fun breather in the midst of like some really like intense, epic kind of music that we're getting from Kamasi.
Yes, which brings us to the sixth track on the album, which is an epic statement with the name Dream State. Dream State is sort of eerie sounding. I'm getting a Lost in the Jungle sort of vibe with this track, and this is the track with the most number of plays on Spotify from what I could tell from the numbers that I was seeing from this album. So it's relating to a number of listeners. There's a lot in here in Dream State. It also includes Andre 3000 on the flute. That might be a contributing factor too. The flutes and the synth sounds create this sonic landscape before Kamasi plays a rhythmic ostinato-like idea. And there's some pentatonic-based ideas utilized here too. And there's awesome layering that's going on that's created after the saxophone enters, and there is this repeating eighth note pulse until the 3-minute mark. It reminded me of certain moments in types of EDM music a little bit. There's an electronic element to this track, Dream State. And so we get that a little bit with that repeating pulse. Yeah. What'd you think?
I think Max is now our resident EDM expert. He's 2 festivals in. So
I played a whole hour and a half.
thank you, Max. Yeah.
That's my expertise and my experience. Yeah, so I just made that connection. That's why you do some EDM festivals.
Now we know.
Yeah. Don't sleep on the EDM. There is also what sounds to be an alto sax that comes out in the background as well. Pretty sure that's Kamasi on alto. Let's hear a moment where all of that is occurring together and listen to how each sound contributes to the other. Yeah, so there's that emanating pulse and everything sonically going on. And then there's a second section to the song where we're in a different time signature. I'm feeling it as sort of 6/4. You could feel it as 6/8 as the divider. Either way, we get a distinct, repetitive, but catchy bass line too, ostinato ideas in the synth and flute parts, as well as other background sonic layerings, and saxophone gets a solo. Drums also contribute a ton on this track as well. And for the sax, Kamasi is staying pretty mellow and using some space to his advantage. So he's approaching this solo a little differently, letting it breathe more and develop a little bit more organically. There's a spurt of energy by the 550-minute mark, but then the group comes back down and we're continually sort of simmering most of the time. And that alludes to the title of the track, Dream State, where you can imagine a person sleeping and they're just simmering and the dream is exuding out from them. But they themselves are just simmering cool, laying in bed. And that's kind of what I'm getting with a lot of this track. I actually really enjoy listening to Kamasi on this one. In addition to his solo on Computer Love, to me, this is probably the next best solo or in contention with his best solo on the album. Here's a taste of what he's playing. Let's listen to that and his approach together.
Yeah.
Right. So right there was that spurt of energy I was talking about where he's more busy. But a lot of that, he's sort of riff based and blues based, and there's little licks and a lot of space in this solo.
Yeah. It's kind of what I had written down. Just really great use of space and kind of notes of different lengths as well to kind of just float around on the groove during the solo. It kind of feels like we're just floating. And at times, I was like longing for more from this Kamasi solo, but it seems like it may not be the point of this quote unquote dream state from Kamasi. So I definitely understand what he's going for here, and he accomplishes that well. And Max pointed that out well with his solo.
Yeah. I'd say I kind of wanted a little bit more as well. Like I think the problem was it was set up so nicely.
Yeah.
Where there's all this space and we're really kind of vibing out, and there's these little riff ideas, and it starts to reel you in more and more and more, and then it's slightly disappointing about who caught you. If you're a fish out of the water.
Yeah.
and you're getting reeled in. You're like, okay, maybe this is kind of interesting. And then you find out, oh, wait, I'm about to get killed and eaten. So maybe that's kind of what we're getting here. I don't know. But to me, I liked this sort of overall style and feel from Kamasi. It's different than some of his other solos, and that's why it stands out. So that's the really nice moment. Could go more places, but hey, I think that's the point of this track, maybe. And they do get slightly more intense as they continue, but they immediately come down again into that simmering feeling, and they go into that constant eighth note pulse fill from the beginning of the track. And then Kamasi plays these consistent eighth note and 16th note rhythms on saxophone as the track fades out. And all in all, it's very neat. Kind of has two different parts I mentioned. Or perhaps you can think of the first 3 minutes as the introduction to the song, where one can maybe imagine a person falling asleep into the dream state. And the second half of the song is where they're actually dreaming.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's a really cool track and great imagery set forward here. Like you said, Max, that's, really cool track. And it leads us into the 7th album on the track entitled Together.
The 7th track on the album.
Yeah.
The 7th track. You said the 7th album on the track.
I did? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
No, there's 7 entire albums on one track. That's what it feels like. No, I'm just kidding. The 7th track on the album. Wow, I didn't even realize. Okay. But the 7th track on the album is entitled Together, which is a really nice laid-back groove. The melody is sung by multiple singers as well as doubled by a few instruments, and we get a really nice melody that feels like it's continuing to lift us up with kind of the way it works with the changes in the tune. And we go straight into a killer trombone solo out of the melody. Feels like kind of a groove ballad playing here on this track, which is super well done here by Ryan Porter. And then we get a really, really great solo from Kamasi here. And this is probably my favorite solo on the album. There's just such great build, and I love lots of the different ideas that we get from Kamasi. Let's listen to the build through the bulk of the solo here and how well it's played by Kamasi and the entire band. And then kind of like Max was talking about earlier, I really like how they kind of get to this climax and bring us back down to earth a little bit towards the end. So let's take a listen to this all together.
Yeah, lots of great movement in there, and don't be afraid of a long note.
Yeah.
Hello?
I like how it's just like, it definitely serves as kind of the ballad on the album, but it's like this like super groovy, like we've got synth bass there, just kind of super groovy, laid back, like ballad feel, which is super cool.
I also really dig the trombone solo on this track.
Yeah.
Really, it reminds me of a couple of cats I've played with, and it was a really neat moment the way the trombone entered in his solo. So great stuff from Ryan Porter, great stuff from Kamasi and the whole group. It's a nice touch to this album.
Yeah, for sure. I really enjoy this track. And we get BJ the Chicago Kid doing some of the vocals in the melody, so definitely important to shout him out there. And yeah, we just go back into the melody after Kamasi's solo, and there's a really nice ride out to end the song with a really nice day crescendo to a soft ending. So really cool track here, and kind of a different vibe than what we've gotten thus far. I really enjoyed this tune.
Yeah, and then we get one of the more really notable tracks from this album called The Garden Path. It's an epic tune here, natural flow and intensity with this tune, The Garden Path. And there's large sonic landscape too, to start it with synths, percussion, more percussion, drums, electric guitar sounds too. There's a repeated eighth note idea that brings in the groove, and the main chorus theme with powerful lyrics that say, bright minds with dark eyes speak loud words, tell sweet lies. And that vocal hook is a key element to the tune, The Garden Path. So take note of that. It's a little catchy, might get stuck in your head like it did to me. And then the lyrics go right into the sax solo with Kamasi using longer notes before going into some pretty hip ideas that utilize repetition, chromaticism, and a lot of the mid and high range of the horn. Let's listen to a bit of that here together and get more of a sense of what Kamasi delivers on Fearless Movements, The Garden Path. Yeah. Yeah, this would be my other favorite Kamasi Washington solo. Actually, I can't decide which is my favorite.
Yeah.
I really like how he starts this solo in particular.
Yeah.
That's what really gets you. And then it's sort of more of the same, but it's cool. I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think this tune is really cool. And of the kind of more like jam, longer, like more jam tracks with lots of solos, I think this one kind of stands out to me in a certain way. The solos, the melody, those kind of catchy lyrics. I think that this one has a certain way of standing out to me.
Yeah, I think it's really that entrance really grasps you, and you have those longer notes, and you're listening, and then it gets more rhythmic, and then more notey, and there's development there.
Yes.
It's just, to me, that first 30 seconds of a solo is really cool, really hip. And then we also get a trumpet solo that comes in with the same note as the last note of the saxophone solo, I'm pretty sure, where we're passing the baton to the next soloist. He approaches the solo in a similar fashion with the use of long notes, and then intensifies to the use of faster lines and playing lots of ideas in the upper register of the instrument. I love the long, screaming high note on trumpet towards the end of the trumpet solo too. Dante Winslow really delivers on his solo on The Garden Path, and each solo leads into the melody notes that match the lyric pitches of the chorus line, only played by the horns with no vocals played. And they do that once. So in between solos, it's like a transition statement where it's sort of like a shout section that's bookmarking each soloist, which leads us into the trombone solo. That's the third solo on the track. Great work on connecting ideas in this solo. Like the other two artists on the track, the trumpet and saxophone players, the trombonist, Ryan Porter, uses repetition to his advantage as well, while also playing rhythmically with the rhythm section, as the drummer goes with him at one point during the solo. Let's listen to the tail end of the trombone solo where we can hear that happen, and listen to how well the drummer is going with the trombonist and the group is playing as a complete ensemble.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're leading back into that vocal hook. So moving right into one thing into the next, great transitioning. Obviously, the vocals are back in there as all three horns get a feature. I love this aspect of the arrangement, using the hook as a transition statement in addition to it being a catchy chorus. Great arrangement on this track, The Garden Path. Yeah.
Yeah,
What'd you have?
I totally agree. I think that's like another thing that helps this track really stand out is using that vocal chorus as a hook in between the solos. It just feels like this track, the development, the arrangement, everything about this track just feels super fresh and unique, which I really enjoy, and the solos are all really killer.
Exactly. And then they go on, they repeat that theme 3 times to end it with a screaming trumpet on top from the last time or two, copying the main line in the high range. It reminded me of what lead trumpet often does in a big band setting, with those really stratospheric high note parts that a lead trumpet player might play. The trumpet player, I think it's Dante Winslow, does that on this track as well towards the very, very end of it. And then they hit that final chord with some leftover notes and percussion played to end it. All in all, a superb track to me that incorporates improvisation, a great arrangement, lead trumpet-like ideas, a well-defined repeating chorus, working to parallel a lot of the common traditional jazz practices, but utilizes them in newer and interesting ways. Anything else on that one?
No, I think that summarizes it all super well, and I think that yeah, it's a super cool track and one that I'll definitely come back to from the album.
Yeah. To me, I know that this one has been played on jazz radio a lot on the Real Jazz channel. I've heard this track a few times. So definitely one that people are really connecting with and realizing some of those elements you and I brought up. All right, and then we get the 9th track called Road to Self. Dwayne, you didn't seem to like this one very much, but there are some decent reasons why that may be. All in all, it's a 13-minute long track, so it's the longest tune on the album. There's moments of severe intensity throughout this one. It's got an ominous beginning complete with cascading synth sounds before the keys enter with chords. Then after the keys enter, the bass enters, then percussion, and then drums, making a very cool instrumental layering. The horns enter with a melody complete with many long notes, half notes, whole notes, etc. And perhaps a longer note head points to the idea that the road to finding oneself can be a long journey, with its title, Road to Self. The sax solo begins around the 240 mark. Delay effect is used. Solo lines are often only 2 measures long or less, with moments of delay filling in the spaces in between those sax lines. Let's listen to some moments of that together. Yeah, so that's how he started starting out with his solo. And as he continues, he extends the lengths of his notes, lines, and ideas. Lots of repetitive, fast 4 or 5 note ideas used. And things like reverb are used as well to create this almost vortex-like quality I keep mentioning. It's as if we've entered that vortex or tornadic cycle. It's like we're in a tornado here and we're spinning in this musical intensity. Let's listen for yourself. Let's check it out together. That's probably the best representation of the vortex thing, I think.
That is, yeah, full send into the vortex. And I think that's a good point. Max kind of prefaced my feelings on the tune, which I might have a few qualms with it. And it just feels like at times we're just getting lost in the sauce on this song. And that's kind of a moment there where it's like, it's really like cool playing, but I feel like it kind of, in this song, I start to get lost in this album a little bit, and I'm wondering like what's, it feels like not all a lot of it's like stuff that we've kind of heard before. We're just like really drawing it out really for 13 minutes. So that's kind of what I'm feeling here. I'm kind of getting lost in the sauce of Road to Self at this point.
I think that's a good point, because that moment is only maybe a third of the way through the song.
Yes.
You'd think that would be maybe later or right in the middle. So yeah, the length of the tune is something that I would understand you would have qualms with. One thing, I don't know, I got a moment of imagery during that where I am picturing, I'm in the Midwest, so people got to deal with tornadoes. And so to me, that was the ultimate tornado sound. I just pictured this cow in the middle of a field getting sucked up by the tornado. And as they're reaching that climax in those delay pedals, and not delay pedals, but that delay sound and reverb, the cow is
Oh, we lost Max. All right, Max is back.
Yeah, I'm back.
The tornado got him. All right, Max. I don't what we're let's go back to the cow and the tornado.
The cow is being caught in the tornado, and
Okay.
as the tornado gets more intense, the cow is rising in the air with it. And then right after that vortex moment, the tornado's subsiding and the cow is slowly and pleasantly brought down from the sky and is just landed back on the field. And that's the story of the cow, is what I'm getting with the vortex moment.
That is not where I thought. I thought we were going to have to call PETA for a second on Max. I thought it was going in a different direction.
I don't want to get in trouble. They're sort of,
They're serious.
they're serious. Yeah. Don't mess up PETA. They'll get you.
Yeah, but that's funny. I thought the cow was done for, but that's we always get a nice moment of Max's imagery. We should make it a whole section on the podcast. It was
the best imagery moments.
Yeah, it was almost so profound that the internet couldn't handle what Max had to say there.
Yeah, we were frozen. They weren't ready. But anyway, we're released from the vortex after that moment, and things simmer into a lengthened bass solo. It sounds like some effects are used on the bass as well. Great ideas, many riff-like ideas expressed, mixed with rhythmically interesting faster lines, but it's always grooving. And the group builds as the sounds of the solo gets distorted, and we're going back into the vortex, and they build again, so there's another tornado about to happen. And then they come back down from the start of the drum set solo. For the start of the drum set solo, it's good to hear a drum solo. Ronald Bruner Jr. brings the heat on this one. It was interesting listening to how he's using the hi-hat in the start of his solo. Also, a lot of different grooves utilized during the solo before he's bashing the toms and the whole kit before settling down for the entrance of the head to come back in towards the end of the track. Let's listen to a moment of the drum solo here. Yeah, so you can get a taste of what he's given us. Any thoughts on that?
Nope, not really. I mean, it's cool to have the drum feature, and I think Ronald Bruner Jr. is a great player. I always go back to, there's a video of him playing with George Duke and Christian, what's his name, bass player. Oh my God, names are not.
Christian McBride.
Playing It's On at like a jazz festival a while back. And that's a fun listen. I always go back to that one. I don't know if you've listened to that one before.
I think I have, but I'll definitely check it out again.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's great to hear him.
yeah, Ronald Bruner Jr. is great. Yeah, so it's cool to get a drum feature on the album. I feel like maybe it gets lost a little bit towards the end of this like super lengthy track. But yeah, it's definitely cool to have the feature on the album.
It would have made more of a statement if the track wasn't so long. I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is a lot of great dynamic built within the head out after the drum solo. They sort of bring the intensity down, lots of dynamics, great release of tension at the end of this track. After a few moments of completed silence, though, there is a re-entrance of some sort of electronic synth sound before the song completely ends, perhaps indicating that the road to self is never finished. That's how I took that. Otherwise, it seems unnecessary and ridiculous. I don't know, but it's not your favorite track either, so I don't know. There are great moments I like.
That's the thing is like the playing is great. It's not like it's bad music, right? Like the music is really good. All of the soloing is really good, and there's some really interesting moments. In my opinion, it just feels like it gets a little bit redundant at times, and not only within itself, but within the album. And it's like feels like it's kind of redundant to some of the stuff we've heard already. The drum solo is super cool. It feels like if we cut this track down to 5 or 6 minutes and actually got to, by the time the drum solos come around, I've feel like I'm kind of already at this place of like tuning out a little bit on this track. So that's how I personally feel. I'm not like, if someone were to say, oh, I really love this track, I think it's like this really cool journey. And that's the cool thing about it is it does kind of flow nicely and there's some really cool different sections. So if you like this track, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you. For me personally, in its place in the album, I start to get lost a little bit on this one.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take on it. I did like moments of it. So it's not my least favorite track per se, but it's got a lot in it, and you just got to strap in and see where it takes you.
Yeah.
Which the album takes us to another place, maybe space, with the 10th track on the album called Interstellar Peace. What'd you think of this one?
Yeah, I think that this track is super interesting. It has a very soundtrack kind of feel to it, especially to start. It feels like it belongs in a movie about landing on the moon to me. But it doesn't come across as cheesy as it definitely could with like the cinematic feel on a jazz album. The melody has this expansive, we've arrived kind of feeling to it. And it sounds like there's some samples of maybe like some NASA communications or something similar during the melody kind of overlaid over top. The first few minutes of the song are very through composed, but then we get into this kind of open trading horn section where the whole band opens up a bit behind this. I love the way they all play off of each other and some dynamics we are getting here. It gets busier, a lot busier as we reach this kind of climax, and then the resolution out of this section is pure beauty. I want us to take a listen. We've kind of talked about this kind of climax and resolution at different points in the album, but I think this one's a super unique instance of it in a super unique track, something that I wasn't really expecting to hear on this album. But let's take a listen all together for that. Yeah, and that's pretty much the end of the track. We've landed. Yeah,
we've landed the spaceship.
Yeah, it's cool. Go ahead, Max, and I'll say what I have to say after.
The only thing is, I wanted to say I really dig that they're ending a track quite differently than some of the other tracks.
Yeah.
It's a nice moment of arrival. It's an arrival point at the end of this, despite not going to a repeating theme to end it or a melody to end it. And I really dig the elongated note melody of this track. It's as if Buzz Lightyear is about to hit the deck the way it's played. And there are so many imagery connections you can make with this one. But I just want to say there are some nice moments to Interstellar Peace. It just wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, I would say.
Yeah, and it is like kind of feels it's definitely different. If you like this kind of cinematic like kind of way of playing, it's definitely interesting. I think that maybe a qualm that some people might have is like that section that I played is kind of a lot of what we've been getting with the kind of entire band soloing at once and a lot going on and kind of reaching a climax. That might, I mean, you could make the argument that that gets redundant. I think it's cool the way that they're all playing off of each other there. It definitely piques my interest, and I think the way that they come out of it is really cool. But I can see how it's that like might feel repetitive in itself with a lot of what we've gotten from the album. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting addition to the album and kind of a cool way to come out of Road to Self.
Yeah, and it all is dependent upon how you get in and out of those climax moments. And the way they're getting out of the climax moment on that track makes it more interesting to listen to.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So then that takes us to the 11th tune on the album called Lines in the Sand. There's a great groove on Lines in the Sand. It starts with scattered horn entrances before that groove comes in. Nice little horn trio introduction, all in all. Awesome tempo, too. We're sort of just vibing out around 80 to 82 beats per minute. It's a groove-filled vocal chorus included on this one with a catchiness in its rhythm and feel. Nice horn line interlude that comes after the vocal melody that's used a few times throughout the track. Let's listen to that that little horn interlude so we can get a taste for what that is and how it's used in this track. Yeah, so that's a key phrase or element to this tune. And there is an impressive sax solo on this one later on. Lots of development, good length to the solo. Kamasi's pretty much taking his time on this one. Lots of verbatim repeating notes like he's searching or he's on a sort of journey with moments of double time lines before he brings the energy back down. Really nice arc or arch overall for the sax solo. And we get an extended piano solo next, some chordal movement before there's a ton of faster lines. And then the keys player ends the solo with more chordal rhythmic ideas. It's almost like a chord sandwich where the middle, the meat, is some of these faster lines, but the bread, the main foundation of where he's coming from, is the more chordal or rhythmic or extended sound approach towards his solo. So a nice little chordal sandwich with the pianos on this one. The main vocal head re-enters after that, then another time through the horn interlude before a final time through the vocal head. Then there's a touch of flute, I believe played by Ricky Washington, that rides us out on this one. And that was a little unexpected. That was a nice touch to the end of this track. Let's listen to that together. Check out that flute as it seemed a little unexpected.
It's a nice ending.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, these endings are interesting to listen to, and I like the arrangement of this track, the 11th track, Lines in the Sand, and it's got a catchy vocal line too that almost got stuck in my head. So yeah, some nice moments and lines in the sand.
Yeah, and it leads us into the final track on the album, which is entitled Prologue. Fitting title there for the final track. And we get a synth intro that leads us into a rock steady drum groove. The melody has a bit of a cinematic pop vibe to it. And we're getting a good amount of synth stuff going on in the background. Kind of makes me envision like a modern rock opera, if you could imagine. And there's a really great trumpet solo, which might be hard to it's a great trumpet solo, which might be hard to match the energy set forth by the groove in with the rhythm section, but Winslow does it to perfection here. So he really does match this very high energy rhythm section going on, and he kind of leads the charge to new levels of drive, which is impressive with how much the rhythm section is giving us here. I really want us to take a quick listen to how driving the rhythm section is and how Winslow handles it during this solo. So let's take a listen for that here. Lots of energy. Yeah, and I feel like this kind of goes to the title of the album, like Fearless Movement, which is they're unafraid to just keep moving forward, and the rhythm section really does that. And I think it's really, really well done by Winslow here on trumpet to be able to kind of play along with the rhythm section when they're really giving us so much. So I think that's really cool. And then there's a really cool transition after the trumpet solo into Kamasi's solo. And as Kamasi comes in, we get this really grooving synth bass line that I really enjoy. Kamasi plays a couple straightforward blues-oriented ideas at the beginning of his solo that really stand out to me. It goes to show that even when you have this kind of upbeat, synth-driven rock groove going on, there's always a place for the blues. So I want to take a listen to that cool transition and those lines from Kamasi, a little bit of his solo here on Prologue. Yeah, so I think that transition's really cool. I love the way that the synth bass comes in, and then just the way that Kamasi sets his solo up is super cool. Max, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a very kind of almost very purposeful, intentional movement going on in these transitions between solos. I really dug that trumpet solo, screaming it out.
Yeah.
He's moving lines chromatically up and down. Great high notes, reminding me of moments of maybe Ambrose Akinmusiri a little bit.
Yep.
So yeah, some great soloing here, and Kamasi is approaching his certain moments of his solo on this track a little differently.
Yeah, and it's really cool, and I think this track is very interesting. After that section that we listened to, Kamasi gets into a little bit more of a kind of all over the horn sheets of sound approach. He kind of reminds me of Coltrane in his approach here to the horn, but he definitely does it in his own modern way, especially when you consider the context of the compositions and kind of all the different grooves and feels we're getting on the album. So I really appreciate Kamasi's approach. A lot of times when he's soloing, there's a really nice repetitive building section from 523 to 606 where he really starts to let loose into some of those squeals, and Max talks about we get into this vortex of synths surrounding the climax, and it's just like, I think Pharoah Sanders is a great comparison here, and that's kind of where we're getting like this just going into the vortex, which is super cool. And this takes us out of the solo and kind of into a percussive rhythm section feature and back into the melody. I think it's interesting how they kind of dissect the groove into a more halftime feel towards the end and then bring it down to a slowed down halt. It's a super interesting closing track, but I'm unsure if I get any closure here or if I'm just like, I guess that it's over. It's a cool track, but like the end, the way it ends, I'm just like, oh, cool. Okay, the album's done now, I suppose.
Well, to me, it points to the point of the title of the tune, prologue, right? That usually comes after the actual end of a book or something. So it's sort of like this is a postscript moment or a PS. Here we are again. And so it may not really matter how they end it.
Yeah.
The way this track is being used and with its title and everything, it seems like just an extra PS moment.
Afterthought. That's an interesting point.
Afterthought of the album, even though there's some great moments in it and great playing and nice trumpet playing, and there's moments of great synth stuff and groove stuff, but maybe that's the point of how it ends. It's like, well, we already ended. What what more do you want?
Yeah. That's
I don't
a great
know.
point. Yeah.
So,
but yeah, that's the final track on the album. 12 songs, an hour and a half. Yeah, and let's get into our top threes and our not so hot tracks. You want to go first, Max, or you want me to go first on this?
I can go first.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, so we all every episode we each pick our top three favorite tracks. My first favorite track is The Garden Path. That seemed the most succinct arrangement. Great solos in that, great arrangement, great playing in general. Awesome groove as well. I think that is a great culmination of everything this album delivers in The Garden Path. The second favorite tune is the first track on the album, Les Sanu. Some great moments in there, nice extended piano soloing. Third favorite track is Computer Love. I really dig the hook on that one, as well as the saxophone solo. So for me, that's my third favorite. I would like to say honorable mentions include Together, the ballad on the album, Dream State, and I like the vocal hook on Lines in the Sand a lot. And then for my not so hot track, the track I think maybe not up to par with others, I was debating between a couple, and I went with The Visionary, which is the tune that sort of leads into Get Lit, that features Terrace Martin on some alto saxophone, which is really nice and really cool. Although when it does transition into Get Lit, I feel a little conjumbled or disjointed. I don't think it's as relevant to the next track as it could be. And to me, that makes me question its necessity on the album.
Yeah, and I think you make some really good points, and I appreciate those sentiments there. And I have some similar thoughts. I feel like Garden Path is by far my favorite track on the album. It's my number one in my top three, and I think it's just the one that I'm going to keep coming back to and has the most cool different arrangement aspects. The solos are fantastic. The melody's great. I think that it's the one that I'm really going to gravitate towards the most. Second on my top three is going to be the song Together, which is kind of like this groove ballad that we got on the album. I just really like the feel of this song. Trombone solo is fantastic. Kamasi's solo also great. So I really, really liked that tune. And then my third track is going to be Les Sanu, which is the opening track, but just a super awesome track, a great piano solo on that track. So I really, really enjoyed that. And then my honorable mention, I think, might be a little bit maybe contentious in some ways. I really liked Interstellar Peace. I just thought it was a super unique track, and in its own right was just kind of something cool to listen to and something different. And then I think we might all kind of know what my not so hot is, and it's not because the music isn't good or because the playing's not good, but my not so hot is Road to Self, KO, and I just think that it does more of getting in its own way than maybe it does adding to the album, in my opinion. Brings in some redundancy to what Kamasi's already done and is going to do later on in the album. So I feel myself getting lost at times in it. So that's why it's my not so hot. But that's my personal opinion, which leads us into our overall album thoughts and ratings. I'll go ahead and go first and let Max go second. I think that Kamasi Washington's latest release, Fearless Movement, dials the energy up with a dance and groove-filled hour-and-a-half journey. Kamasi never tends to shy away from the full band epic shred fest, and this release is no different. At times, this can lead to some of the compositions getting in their own way and feeling like the album is taking us around in circles. Kamasi's ability and prowess are without question and is on display on nearly every track here on Fearless Movement. The album also features some great additions of other artists at times and brings in many great R&B and hip-hop elements which help to make the album have a fun dance block party feel to it at times. The track Aisha the First showcases bassist Thundercat with a ripping solo as well as a great hip-hop feature from Raj Austin. Although these are both great features and I like the melody and groove on this track, as many others on the album can feel cluttered at times and might get in their own way just a little too much. I feel as this album may leave listeners with similar feelings to the ones I had. The music is without a doubt epic and extremely well played, but also failing to make a major impression overall. The power-packed, hard-hitting shred sections from Kamasi are epic, but may at times get a little redundant and lead to that cluttered feeling. With all of that being said, there are some epic tracks and epic moments throughout the recording that are very deserving of praise and attention. Tunes such as Garden Path, Les Anew, and Interstellar Peace are unique spotlights on the album that stick in my mind whereas I sometimes feel lost in compositions such as Road to Self that struggle to keep me engaged. Fearless Movement is without a doubt deserving of a listen and getting to see what Kamasi brings to the table with this release. There are a lot of fun, hard-driving grooves and enjoyable tracks. Kamasi's playing throughout the album shines through, and he is undoubtedly a modern legend. This album is certainly a good album and a fun listen, but in my opinion, maybe shouldn't spark Album of the Year conversations. I'm excited to hear what Kamasi has in store for the future, as well as I think we all are. My overall score on this album is a 7.3 out of 10.
Yeah, well said. I would concur with a lot of those points. I think this sort of epic tenacity and the many engrossing sounds of Kamasi Washington are somewhat predictable at this point. If you've heard him before, you can kind of tell or have an idea of what this album will deliver. You're going to get roaring sax galore mixed with cool grooves, great musicians, and moments of catchy melody. The same is delivered here with Kamasi's latest record, Fearless Movement. Don't get it wrong, though, there are quite a few unexpected moments on this record, as well as a nice variety of tempos and overall feels or vibes. He seems very comfortable and visionarily focused in this latest feat. These sonic concepts seem full and complicated, yet usually grooving and crystal clear at the same time. It's great to see Kamasi recording with Thundercat on this recording, along with half of all the musicians in LA. Just kidding. A laundry list of musicians collaborated on this one, but it mostly works to the music's advantage. Once in a while, the vast array of people can be cluttering. A killer horn section is present, complete with Dante Winslow on trumpet and Ryan Porter on bone, while Patrice Quinn delivers awesome vocals on Computer Love, and bassists Mike Mosley, Ben Williams, and Thundercat are featured nicely throughout the album. Drummer Ronald Bruner Jr., Thundercat's brother, is a nice touch too. Kamasi states that he focuses on dance and movement with this record. I get the sense that this body of work is more of a statement on movement through life, with song titles like Dream State, Lines in the Sand, and Road to Self. Also present are instances of spiritual emphasis and almost chant-like vocalizations, as heard in the opening track entitled Les Sanu. Another key element are the moments of overdriven intensity in the middle of Kamasi's sax solos, where the saxophone and its accompaniment follow one another into a driving vortex. This definitely happens in Road to Self and Computer Love. Speaking of the latter, Computer Love has catchy vocal lines present, as does Lines in the Sand. The ensemble has an overall nice take on the funk band Zapp's Computer Love. The tune Dream State seems to have a large number of Spotify plays as it incorporates repetitive rhythmic accompaniment, catchy bass lines, and synthesized ostinatos or sounds, as well as a lengthy, somewhat soulful sax solo. It's as if the listener is following the movement into a dream, and we hear what the dream sonically exudes as it fades out into the abyss. The tune together serves as the album's ballad while maintaining an R&B influence. The Garden Path is the most straightforward, hard-driving musical display that coalesces a lot of the important musical aspects included on this record. All three horns deliver awesome solos alongside an energetic backdrop, filled with inspired drum accents and lengthened, syncopated piano harmonies. Interstellar Peace effectively illustrates a sense of being in the stars, almost sounding like part of a movie soundtrack. That brings me to my main critique. Some tracks lend themselves more naturally to be repeatedly listened to than others. One personal, perhaps unexpected highlight to me is Get Lit, a fun track featuring George Clinton and D-Smoke that includes a great alliterative wordplay and clean interspersed horn lines. Asia the First seems a bit cluttered, yet features a killer bass solo from Thundercat along with great vocals and raps from Taj and Roz Austin. Cameron Graves and Brandon Coleman also play a key role on piano and keyboards throughout the album. The Visionary acts as an intro into the catchy Get Lit, yet may seem unnecessary. Prologue is a nice way to end the record, featuring a hyperactive drum groove mixed with a longer note melody and screaming trumpet. It also makes sure to end the record with one final performance of the inevitable sonic vortex that occurs on a Kamasi Washington album, here expressed with an ultimate climax right before the 6-minute mark. The tune's ending is not the most appealing as it ends with electronic garble and almost chair-squeaking noises. I commend Kamasi Washington on his latest work. It incorporates an array of emotions, grooves, feels, and instrumental solos and catchy vocal phrases. Kamasi seems right at home here, giving way to a sense of unencumbered freedom. The product seems slightly lighter and tends to breathe more than some of his previous releases, yet the music is also cluttered and overly busy at times. Perhaps there are occasions of one too many percussive instruments or synth sounds. Despite these instances, I dig a lot of great moments present on Fearless Movement. There is conceptual vulnerability tied to an emphasis of motion, providing a statement on life's many movements. While certain tracks like The Garden Path speak more to me than others, there is a little something here for most people. It is worth it for you to check this album out on your own. You'll have to decide which tracks speak to you for yourself. My overall score, 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, Max, and I think you hit all the points very well there. Max's overall thoughts are always such a good overall idea of what goes on within the album, so I definitely appreciate that from you, Max, there.
One could say I understood the assignment.
Yes. Max could turn this in for a jazz history class or a jazz whatever class, and I think he'd get an A on it, so... Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. Our Jazz Jam score on this album is going to be a 7.4 out of 10. If you've listened to the album and you have feelings on it, whether good or bad or indifferent or kind of where we are, just let us know. You should reach out to us. You can email us at thejazzjampodcast.com. You can at gmail.com, jazzjampodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out on our website, through Instagram. There's many great ways to get in touch with us, which leads us to... Go ahead, Max.
I was just going to say, we also now have a Twitter.
A Twitter as well. Okay, I didn't even know that Max is in the Twitter game, which is not Twitter anymore. It's X. So we have
That's right.
an X, whatever the heck you want to call it.
Right.
But that kind of leads me to our next point, which is our next album, which was an album that we were certainly going to get to at some point. We had a different album lined up, but decided to change the direction of the next album. We had a listener chime in on Instagram, DM us on Instagram and say, hey, I like what you guys are doing. These are a couple of albums I really would like to hear from y'all. So our next album that we're doing, I think a lot of people will be delighted to find out, is we are doing Moanin' by Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. So yeah, I mean, everyone knows Moanin', so super excited to just dive deep into it. I mean, I think it's an album that we've both listened to and probably all listened to a million times, but I know I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I am too. And we haven't gotten into Art Blakey yet. So
No.
we mentioned him on our episode where we went into Hank Mobley's Soul Station.
Yeah, I think he was on that. Yeah, so
Yeah, he's on that record. So we've talked about him per se, but we haven't gone into the Jazz Messengers history, and there's a lot to say on that. We won't do a deep dive per se, but we'll mention that very important institution in jazz known as the Jazz Messengers, led by the great drummer and band leader Art Blakey. So a lot to get into with that record. A lot of great grooves on there. Bobby Timmons on piano.
Lee Morgan. I
Lee
don't know
Morgan
if we've
on
done
trumpet.
Lee yet. Oh, we did one of Lee's entire albums. We did the Sidewinder. Okay, so
We did.
We're getting to the point where we've done so many episodes, it's sometimes hard to remember, but we have gotten into Lee Morgan. But I mean, this is just some of the solos on this. Like the solo on Moanin' from Lee is just some of the like staples in jazz and in Blue Note history. So it'll be good.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to it. So I'm already thinking what I'll say.
Yeah. I'm already, it'll be great. I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode. Definitely a cool album. Go listen to it for yourself. It definitely deserves a listening. I really, really enjoy Kamasi's playing, and I love the way he sticks to himself. So, definitely a lot to take from this album. And yeah, check out our website. It's linked in the show notes. Pretty much everything you need is linked in the show notes. Our email, our website. We have a really cool Spotify playlist with our top 3 tracks from each album that we've reviewed. You can go to our website and kind of look at our power rankings of all the albums we've done, kind of ranked based on our Jazz Jam scores that we've given them. So just lots of cool resources, and we appreciate everyone for listening. And yeah, the newsletter's up and coming, so go ahead and get signed up for that. Max, is there anything you want to add before we sign off on this episode?
No, just that I'd appreciate any reviews. You may leave us, any ratings. It really helps algorithmically with us being seen and noticed by more and more people and more entities. And I think it just, the more you interact with us, the more we'll grow, and we appreciate any listeners, and hopefully we keep growing.
Yeah, it's been fun, and we've got a lot lined up, and we know it's been a little bit since our last episode, but we're going to keep the episodes coming out. Really excited to get into Moanin', so there's a lot to look forward to coming up from us. And I just want to thank everyone for listening, and this has been an episode of the Jazz Jam Podcast.